We want to talk, though, about international trade and especially the relations between the United States and China on news regarding TikTok. The latest we've got there is that there is this potential that TikTok might team with Twitter. That was discussed over the weekend, according to the Wall Street Journal. Also, Microsoft still pursuing their deal with TikTok. The CEO, as you know from Microsoft, having spoken with President Trump about potentially acquiring the platform. But to help us break down where all of this is headed and what all of this means, we invite back into the stream Howard Yu. He is IMD Business School's Lego Professor of Management and Innovation. He is joining us live from Hong Kong, and we appreciate your being here. Want to start with something you pointed out, because this isn't only affecting TikTok, it's affecting WeChat as well, the movement in the United States to potentially ban these platforms. And you said any smartphone without WeChat is useless for the Chinese. What does that mean, and what does that mean for us in the United States?
Yeah, I mean, if you go to China, you will notice that Chinese consumers are all using WeChat. And in a way, WeChat inside China is almost like Amazon, Facebook, Twitter, all rolled into one. It's a monster app. Not just of that, you also have payment system on top of that. So whether you're checking into a hotel or buying stuff in McDonald's, Starbucks, everything you do around your life, including paying taxes, is all done on WeChat. Now, so if you are having an iPhone inside China, but without the ability to get access to WeChat, it's useless. Unlike here in the United States, if you're having, a Huawei phone without Google, then at best you can still, in China, you can still get around with all these Chinese equivalent. But inside China, an iPhone without WeChat, that becomes completely useless. Now, that's going to hurt Apple a lot. After all, China is one of the largest international market for Apple too.
Howard, it's Julie here. Thanks again for joining us. So one would think that would also have implications for China-U.S. business. In other words, the flow of travel when all of this coronavirus hopefully is behind us or starts to ease. If a Chinese traveler has WeChat on their phone and relies on it to such a high degree, and they want to travel to the U.S. for business, but in the U.S. will perhaps not have that access, one would think that would also be an issue. So what are the sort of implications? I mean, is this going to be tenable? Is this going to last, this WeChat part of this restriction?
I mean, if it really goes into effect, it's going to affect not just the Chinese tourists, right? It's even the millions of diaspora around outside of China who have lacked the ability to communicate with their loved one inside China. But not just that, if you think about all these international businesses, whether it's Walmart or Starbucks or even Nike, Adidas, they're all doing business inside China using WeChat as the dominant platform to communicate with their end consumer, whether sending coupon, etc. Blocking that is going to hurt hugely among these international companies. So we are not talking about banning a single communication platform. We're talking about a complete decoupling of consumer versus the major company in hand.
Howard, it's Julia LaRoche, and you're totally right. I had to get WeChat when I went to China, and you're just referencing some of the big multinational players, Starbucks, Walmart, for example, and why it's so critical. So I guess when you step back and look at some of the U.S. businesses, don't you think that could help maybe change some of this? Or how long do you think this tension here could continue? I would think that some of these businesses might, say something about it.
Right, and not just that, right? If you think about the parent company of WeChat, which is owned by Tencent, Tencent is not a small player like TikTok. It's one of the most valuable company from Asia, right? They're holding, including Tesla, as well as Snapchat, and a host of IT company in Silicon Valley. All of these are so unabashed, and in a way, this is the nature of internet company, right? The fact that Silicon Valley is so powerful is because you can build up a world-class, application and roll it across the world. Now, given Facebook and Google is not operating in China, but Microsoft and IBM are, and a host of IT company coming out from the US are operating in China, including Texas Instruments, for instance. So it's not just so clear-cut that we could kick out WeChat and be clean of our internet. In fact, there would be so much inertia. That break up is going to hurt everybody. So I would suggest a lot of business executive probably is going to lobby against such a brutal or brute force going forward.
Howard, it's Brian Chung here. I want to switch gears to some of the political news that we saw. Jimmy Lai, the publisher of Apple Daily, that pro-democracy paper in Hong Kong, where you're at right now, being arrested under that new national security law. That doesn't necessarily relate directly to what we were just talking about with TikTok, for example, but we've seen that escalating tensions between the US and China as you have these tit-for-tat sanctions against specific individuals. We saw that as the case with China now sanctioning US Senators Marco Rubio, Ted Cruz, for example. How do you think this folds into the business atmosphere between US companies and those dealing in China, but then also by extension Hong Kong as well?
Right. So at IMD, when we work with senior executive, these days, the biggest worry is around uncertainty, right? Because businesses only thrive under predictability, under transparency. And right now, whether it's executive orders or sanction, becomes very much on an ad hoc basis. You don't even know what's going to happen next. So TikTok, for instance, in Hong Kong already pulled out a few months ago. Like in Hong Kong, we used to be able to get access to TikTok, and friends of mine told me they could no longer can because companies simply don't want to get enmeshed into such political fight. So I think going forward for senior executive is try not to pick side, because no company on a global scale can afford to let go of one market versus the other. And yet building on the bridges across the two increasingly become harder and harder. The big implication is the valuation of company. If any company losing half of the international market, their stock price is going to crumble.
It's on that we say thank you, Howard Yu, IMD's Business School Lego Professor of Management and Innovation, joining us from Hong Kong. We wish you all the best and good health, sir.